So going back to nature, so when you say lack of nature, I guess the main thing you're saying is that we spend less time out in the nature, right? So whether that be a lot of time indoors, a lot of time on our screens, and I was talking about this with Mr. Dom as well, a week ago, and one of the things we thought about was that the way your dopamine circuit has been evolved in your body is trained in a way to reward you for doing hard things, right? If you go out and hunt the deer, then you feel positive emotion and you feel dopamine going through your body because you did something that promotes your survival. But one of the challenges that we saw in the modern world was that you're rewarded for sitting on your couch, right? Because since screens and video games and TV give you the dopamine that you would ultimately get from doing a hard workout or going out and being in nature, since you're able to access it at such a heightened stimulated level sitting on your couch, you're rewarded for that behavior. And that in turn causes you to not want to go out and be in nature because there's so much access to dopamine just in your own room. So I know you're the bio teacher, so any thoughts on that? Do you think that has some truth in it or?
Truth of it in terms of the dopamine. Yeah, I mean it's dopamine is a drug, right? All pharmaceutical companies are trying to mimic what we already have inside of our brain. There's a lot of good stuff up there. But yeah, it is a drug and it's part of our reward system and it's what makes us feel good. And when it does feel good, we try and reenact that behavior, do that behavior over and over again, whether it's taking a drug or it's falling in love or it's sitting on your phone and seeing how many likes you get on something. And I don't know how we get away from that because it does feel good. It's easy. It's instant gratification or it's not. So it has its benefits and it has its negative too in terms of negatively impacting your dopamine hits. Like if you don't get a like or snap map, is that what it is? Snap, like you can see we're like, why are all these people together and I'm not there? Like that like it has a negative effect on your emotions. So I don't know. I don't think just being out in nature, it is good for us, but I don't know if people necessarily. So if you do things and you have this level of dopamine hit and you try and do something else, it doesn't have that same level, so it doesn't feel as rewarding. So you're not going to seek out this behavior. So I think we've altered the levels of dopamine that we kind of deal with every day. And so other things just don't seem as exciting, which is unfortunate. Um, but like, I mean, we talk about you like screenagers, but we all would have been the same probably when we were teenagers. But it is interesting. You're the first human beings on this planet that are kind of growing up in this digital age from a very, very young age. Like you've kind of grown up with screens your whole life. So we don't know how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, it's a problem. I think that when you mentioned how we deal with so much more dopamine now on a day-to-day level than we did before, so other things don't make us feel less fulfilled. I do agree with that. And I know we were earlier talking about like some of the changes I made in my life last winter. And some of them included lowering my screen time significantly, right? So one of the biggest achievements I made is that I think for quite a bit of time I had like a 20 or 30 minute screen time on my phone. I basically drastically reduced the number of times I pick it up per day. Um, I know I mentioned I watch podcasts, but I also drastically decreased the amount of time I'm spending on my computer, spending I deleted all this other social media and everything. I didn't watch like movies or anything like that. And one of the biggest changes I found is that everyday things were more fulfilling, right? Whether it be walking to class or it be talking to someone. I noticed that obviously not immediately, but after some time I noticed that those when I went to bed at night, I felt like those activities felt so much more fulfilling and satisfying to me. And when you think about it now, like looking back, it makes so much sense, right? Because if you're so used to feeling at a level 1,000 of dopamine, even for short bits throughout the day, then the level 100 won't feel that good, right? But if you eliminate all the highs, then your baseline increases, right? And you're able to experience more joy through everyday activities. But yeah, I know a lot of people say that our generation is like very weak, right? We're growing up with um so much access to instant gratification and comfortable lifestyles, but I do feel like that's kind of destroying us, and I do think that it might be one of the worst times to grow up because it's so easy to go down a rabbit hole of just stimulating yourself and not able to live life in a more fulfilling and satisfying way. So it is a problem, but I guess if we think about solutions, obviously I don't think it's easy for anyone to just say, okay, I'm gonna never pick up my phone again. Not possible even because I still use my phone. I think it's definitely important for us to be able to use those, but as long as they're not using us. But yeah, I think the what at least some solutions I can think about in my head, and then we can switch to some of the ideas you might have, is that I think just having knowledge about how it's impacting has helped me a lot. Just understanding like what it's doing to me and how it's affecting the biochemistry in my brain and impacting the way I live, and then feeling the differences in different lifestyles. That has inspired me to just want to spend more time outside, right? That I love to go hiking. Over the break, I'll be going hiking with my parents and trying to do day trips with my friends. 'Cause I just love being outside. I love being in the outdoors. Even if that's just playing spike ball on summer campus, just trying to spend more time outside away from my room. Um, Having the knowledge of it definitely helped. And then looking at it in a positive way, because I do think that there's not a lot of people who look at being outdoors as a negative thing, right? Obviously, there's the fear growing up, like, oh, it's the weather's bad and things like that. But other than that, I feel like it is a kind of a positive thing. It's just there's other things that are better, right? But if you start to prioritize it as something you want to spend more time doing, right? Like going on a walk by the lake or going on a run or going on a hike, and then trying to make it like a commitment that once a week or every time I get a break, try and do something and it's good for you and feel those positive benefits. I think those two steps are definitely the first ones people could take to kind of transition onto the lifestyle. But what do you think? What are the solutions you think do you have in mind?
I think spending time outside will never um not make you feel good. All right. You think you just it's just I think it's part of our DNA. Um it changes your outlook. Especially if you're exercising, I just don't think it'll never not make you feel good. Having said that, not everyone um has the physical ability to do things outside. And so I do think the internet and the phones and all that has given people access to the world that kind of makes them feel connected in a lot of ways. So I think we're talking about like, we're not necessarily talking about everybody, like not everyone can access the outside in similar ways, but you just can't act like just in terms of disabilities, you can't access certain areas and get through parks and walk through the woods and get through the woods. But I do think being outside, and they've done studies like if they hospital patients, like if you have a window that allows you to see trees or greenery, they seem to recover faster. And in senior homes, if they have access to outside, or if their room has a view with greenery or trees, it also seems to give them a better sense of like health and just sort of well-being. So there is something to it. Then I was reading there are rising cases of myopia in kids, where like your eyeballs turn, getting a little technical now, but where your eyeballs get more of a football shape than a round shape. And it's from looking at screens or reading too much at a young age. So like we're physically changing our eyeballs. That's crazy. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even thought about this. So I like went to I took my son and like, no, he seems fine. But yeah, it's that quick. I mean, all my kids wear glasses. I never wore glasses. And so, right, like it's just this because it's so close and it's literally changing the shape of our eyeballs, which can run into problems later down the road. It can eventually lead to blindness, like, but if you don't take care of it. But so I mean, and there's a book called Last Child in the Woods, like a whole book written about this. I think it's over 10 years old. The nature deficit disorder, like it has a name for it, like nature deficit disorder. We have a name for it. We're changing our eyeballs. So I do think there's value in it. Being a parent and trying to get your kids to go outside, it's not easy. Like it's something that you have to force them to do. Depending on the age, like I think like 8, 9 and under, it's easier. But once they get a phone, once they get a screen, it just changes. And so you're constantly like, get outside, go outside. Well, my friends aren't outside. They're like, we're all playing a game online. It's like, well, ask them if they want to go outside, get outside. And it's just a pain. You're constantly trying to get them outside. And if they are outside, it's because maybe you've driven them to practice and then they're outside and then they come home and then they go on their screen. So we've tried going camping. We try and do stuff outside. And I hope they appreciate it down the road. But and I think it's something that you have to do as a family or want to do as a family or aspects of it. And it doesn't have to be like a great hiking trip, or it is. It's even just walking around or working outside or gardening or doing something around the house. But I think there is absolute value in spending time outside. And I I appreciate it. I need it. I think maybe I know this growing for so many years, just being outside all the time. It's something that I hold dear and I think is very important. And I wish maybe we should teach a class where we spend more time outside. I remember my favorite class in college was dendrology in grad school, where you just study trees. I loved that class because I finally learned like that's a ginkgo biloba tree. Like you kind of get a sense of place and time of the natural world that I never had before. So it kind of like opened up all of this information.
Well, my friend mentioned that he's in an English class this year called Secrets of Nature, where they just go outside. I don't know exactly what they do, but I see them just walking by the library outside every now and then. He seems to enjoy that class because they get to spend time outside. What that friend was telling me, Brock, he's also saying that he learned about how nature sounds. It just the sounds of nature help your mental health a lot, and that he tries to go outside and spend time just to listen to the sounds and the birds and stuff, and he feels that that improves his mental health as well. And do you think there's science to back that up? Is that true as well?
Science back up the sounds of nature. I'm sure it all kind of ties together, like the visual and auditory aspects of it, because it just slows things down and it forces you to kind of observe things that maybe you haven't before. However, I do wear my headphones a lot when I'm outside, so I don't know about that. But yeah, I think Lee Wood teaches that class. And I think I've had some students ask me, like, Mrs. Tara, can you help me find this tree? And this is just tree. Is this what kind of tree? Is there a red maple tree around? So I love that idea that she's teaching that class. And I think also, I think every generation talks about the younger generation, like, oh, the younger generation, blah, blah, blah. Like they're not good. They're doing this. And so our generation is talking about the younger generation. They don't spend enough time outside. And we were always outside. And there are all these memes like on Instagram, like growing up in the 80s, about being in playgrounds with like asphalt instead of like 12 feet of mulch, and how we got third-degree burns on our slides, and like how we spent more time outside, and like we romanticize it a little bit too. But so I think there are good and bad things about every generation, but I think it's also typical for the older generation to say, the younger generation is it's just not the same. They don't have the same values. They're not doing the same things. So I think there's a little bit of that, but I think there's some truth in it as well.
Another problem you mentioned was that we talk too much these days and that there's too much noise. And I know we were talking earlier about the media, so maybe it's correlated with that, but talk to me about what you meant by there's a problem with noise and talking too much these days.
I just think that it's just everywhere. There's so much advice everywhere. Whether it's speeches or special days with themes or TikTok, and like I never had Instagram until this year, and I have it because I'm trying to follow my son's hockey team, but I have to delete it like every other few weeks because I'll find myself like 30 minutes later, like just like like I'm laughing like like, wait, what am I doing? But it's just it's video after video of people saying a lot of it's related to sports. And just like giving their life lessons for sports or things that they've learned or things that kids should be doing. Like, if you want to be a good player, you have to do this, blah, 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 blah. And it's all talk, right? Like, I just feel like I think you just have to kind of go through it and live through it and figure it out yourself. So another popular thing is like, what would you go back and tell your like 16-year-old self, if you could, what would you say to them? And it's adorable, like, and like some people say, like, everything that they say is nice and true, but I don't think you can go back and say anything really, because what am I going to say? Like savor the good moments. It goes by so fast. Like, be the best person you can be, and all that's true. But I think you just have to kind of live your life and you figure these things out on your own. And I just think there's just so much chatter and so much talk, and I think it puts pressure on young people and anyone to kind of, or just makes them feel less because like, well, I'm not doing that, or I don't feel that way all the time, or I'm not the first to practice every day, or I'm not the last person to leave practice every day, or gosh, they seem so strong and so strong-willed and so motivational, and why aren't I like that? Because they're not like that all the time either. Like, no one's like that 100% of the time.
If you enjoyed that clip with Ms. Terhaar, then you're going to love the full-length podcast. Click here to see the full-length podcast, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.